what most men mistake for confidence. There are two kinds of men who walk into a room. The first one scans it immediately, checking who noticed him arrive, adjusting his posture when he catches someone's eye, laughing a half-second too loud at something that wasn't quite that funny. He's performing. He doesn't know he's performing, which is the whole problem. The second man walks in and doesn't need the room to confirm anything. He's already decided who he is before the door opened. Women feel the difference before they can name it. Other men feel it too. Everyone in that room feels E.T., actually, and almost nobody can explain why. You've probably been told that confidence is about body, language. Stand tall, make eye contact, speak slowly, take up space. These things aren't wrong, exactly, but they're the surface of something much deeper. And most men spend their entire lives polishing the surface while the foundation stays cracked. They learn the walk, they practice the voice, they rehearse the handshake, and they wonder why, after years of this work, something still feels hollow, why women still seem to look through them, why their presence in a room never quite lands the way they imagined it would. What nobody tells you is that the behavior you've been calling confidence is often its shadow. It looks similar from a distance. It uses some of the same gestures, but it comes from a completely different place, and that place is fear. Fear of not being enough. Fear of being seen and found wanting. Fear that, if you stop performing, the whole thing collapses. Real confidence doesn't come from managing how people see you. It comes from no longer needing to manage it at all. That's the shift this chapter is going to show you, clearly and without flattery, because you deserve a straight answer after so many years of working with the wrong map. The distinction isn't subtle once you see it. It's actually obvious, and once it lands, you'll start seeing it everywhere, in every conversation you've had, in every moment you thought you were being confident and were actually just running a very sophisticated form of anxiety. This chapter is going to name that pattern precisely, show you where it breaks down in real life, and give you the only reframe that actually changes anything. Not a technique, a truth. Think about the last time you really wanted to impress someone. Maybe it was a woman you found genuinely attractive. Maybe it was a room full of people whose respect you wanted. Maybe it was a job interview, a first date, a conversation at a party where you felt something was at stake. Notice what happened to you in that moment. Notice how your mind started running calculations. What should I say next? I'm talking too much. Did that land? Should I be funnier? More serious? More relaxed? And notice, most importantly, that you were no longer actually present in that conversation. You had left the room. You were watching yourself from the outside, grading your own performance in real time, and the person in front of you could feel the absence even if they couldn't name. E.T., this is the trap. And it's not a character flaw. It's what happens when a man has been taught, usually without words, that his value is conditional, that he has to earn his place in every room, every relationship, every interaction, that the approval of others is a resource he must constantly work to acquire. When you grow up absorbing that lesson, which almost every man does in one form or another, confidence becomes something you try to project rather than something you inhabit. You become an actor playing a confident man rather than a man who simply is one. And here's the brutal irony. The harder you work at the projection, the more obvious the effort becomes, and the less it lands. The misconception most men carry is that confidence is a feeling you get after you've achieved something or after you've been validated enough times, that it's a destination you arrive at. You'll finally feel confident when you make enough money, when you get in good enough shape, when enough women have chosen you, when enough men have respected you. This is seductive logic because it ties confidence to evidence, and evidence feels rational, but it creates a man who is permanently chasing the next piece of proof, whose internal state is always dependent on what just happened to him, and who has no stable ground to stand on when things go wrong, which they always eventually do. The reframe is uncomfortable because it doesn't give you a system to follow. It asks something harder. It asks you to decide, before any evidence arrives, before any external validation shows up, that you are already the kind of man you're trying to become, not to pretend, not to perform, to decide There's a difference between a man who acts confident because he's afraid of being seen as weak and a man who is simply unconcerned with how he's being read. The first man is always bracing for judgment. The second man has stopped making your judgment the subject of the conversation. He's interested in you, in the room, in the moment, in whatever is actually happening, because he no longer needs the interaction to deliver a verdict on his worth. You can feel this distinction in your body when it's explained. Plainly, think of a moment when you were so absorbed in something you loved that you forgot to monitor yourself. Playing a sport you were good at, deep in a conversation about something that genuinely fascinated you. Building something with your hands. In those moments you weren't thinking about how you were coming across. You were just there. That state, that unself-consciousness, is closer to real confidence than anything a technique can produce. The question isn't how to perform that state. The question is what it would take to live from it more consistently. The challenge is this: for the next 7 days, catch yourself in the moment when you start running the calculations, when you start grading your own performance in real time, when you begin monitoring the room for signs of approval or disapproval. Don't judge yourself for it. Just notice it. Name it internally. First, just left the room. Then come back. Bring your attention back to the actual person in front of you, the actual conversation, the actual moment. Do this not because it will make you more attractive, although it probably will, but because it is the practice of becoming someone whose presence doesn't require external confirmation to feel real. Real confidence is quiet. That's what most men miss. The loudest, most assertive, most dominant-seeming man in the room is often the most frightened. The man who doesn't need to dominate the conversation, who can sit comfortably in silence, who can be wrong without his whole identity trembling, who can be rejected without it becoming a story about his worth. That man is operating from a different frequency entirely. He's not louder, he's clearer. And clarity, it turns out, is what presence actually is. What you've been calling confidence was mostly armor. And armor is heavy. It keeps some things out, but it also keeps you in, sealed off from the kind of contact that actually changes you, actually connects you, actually lets you be seen by someone worth being seen by. The men who move through the world with genuine ease aren't men who learned better techniques. They're men who got tired of the performance and decided at some point that probably didn't feel dramatic at the time to just be the thing instead of playing it. There's no certificate you receive for this. No moment when the world stops and tells you that you've finally done enough to deserve to relax. The man who waits for that moment is still waiting on his deathbed. What changes is not the amount of evidence you accumulate. What changes is the question you're asking. Stop asking whether you're confident enough. Start asking whether you're honest enough, present enough, solid enough in your own skin to stop needing the room to answer for. You. The woman worth having doesn't want a man who is always on. She wants a man who is always there. The respect worth earning doesn't come from a polished performance. It comes from the quiet steadiness of a man who knows what he's about and doesn't need you to confirm it. You don't become that man by adding more techniques to your repertoire. You become him by subtracting the need for the performance in the first place. Confidence was never something you were supposed to project. It was always something you were supposed to outgrow. The need to prove